You have helped thousands and thousands of people improve their financial education. What do you think would be the most common misconception that people have about money management in general?
80% of it is about financial literacy. 20% is about the money. The father of my 3 children, he hated my strength. At the age of 21, I bought my first property. And so I said to him, let's do it together. He went and talked to his brothers and he came back and he said, I'm not buying no house with no woman. Regardless of how great you might think your partner is, they're taking control of the finances, have that knowledge. Money is one of the number one things that, break down a relationship. If you're not able to manage your money, the impact of that on your mental health, it will just floor you. Budget is empowering. Because once you know what you've got to spend, you're in control. If it was just documenting your income and expenditure, everybody would be doing it and nobody would be in debt. It's actually a skill and a technique, and there's layers to it. Like I said, it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have.
So before we dive into today's episode, we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that we'll be discussing some pretty sensitive topics, including domestic and financial abuse, as well as miscarriages. We understand these subjects can be pretty difficult to hear, so if at any point you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to pause or skip this episode. If you or someone you know needs support, we'll be including some helpful resources in the show notes too.
Welcome to Raising the Curve, a podcast designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money. Come and learn alongside me, Sophie Hallwright, a total beginner, from the finance expert Victoria Harris.
So I've asked all of the questions you wish you could so that finance, investing and growing your wealth actually makes sense.
Yes, it's expert education, but that we promise will not be boring.
And in the wise words of Cher,
my mom said to me, sweetheart, one day you should settle down and marry a rich man. And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
Come and talk and learn and laugh with us, because together we really can raise the curve. This is one of those conversations, Vic, that I want to say speechless for, but I wasn't really, because I knew I had to pay attention and ask questions. But it was one of the most engaging, insightful conversations I've had in my entire life, and not just on the podcast. I had no idea what the time was. I was just engrossed with everything that she was saying. It was quite incredible.
She was insane, and to the point that halfway through the record, we had to run outside and ask the studio if we could extend the booking, because we were just in such good conversation that we didn't want it to stop, and we wanted to keep going and really capture this conversation for all of you, because it was... I don't even know if we need to intro her anymore. Honestly,
I think we just don't even waste any more time. This is a slightly longer episode, but highly recommend listening to the entire thing. It was just, let's just shut up and go straight to her.
This is Norma Cassius.
Norma, can we just start by talking about your Jamaican heritage? Because I think there's a lot of people who are listening to this podcast that might not know a lot about what that looks like and how it inspires your life and how you live now. And I wondered if you would be able to give us just a bit of context as to how that's influenced your life, but also really what is Jamaican culture?
Jamaican culture, jerk chicken, Bob Marley. Yeah,
all
man.
the good things.
Yeah. It's a really relaxed, slow-paced, relaxed environment where everybody chats to everybody. Do you know what I mean? So, you feel so welcomed just as you step off the plane, basically. The food, they want to share their culture. They want to take you out. If you used to go there and used to just to meet some people randomly, they'd say, there's a club tonight. Do you want to come? Going back to my dad. So he was born in 1914, I think it was. So he was a very... sharp man. I think that's where I get my dress sense from, because back in the days he was always suited and booted, and he had his overcoat over his shoulders and his leather brogues and all those gold teeth and that, and he had really pretty hair. So for black people, when it comes to hair and complexion, in terms of being light-skinned or whatever, light-skinned people seem to have been more favoured than darker-skinned people. And if
within Jamaica?
Even with,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it still goes on today. Not as much. They call it colorism.
Does that mean, is it similar to the privilege when it comes to white privilege, and is it almost the same concept but within its own culture.
Absolutely.
So people are favoured for particular jobs or careers based on
Absolutely,
their fairness.
absolutely, yeah. And in fact, in Jamaica, a lot of people have actually bleached their skin in the Caribbean. Yeah, bleached their skin just to get this lighter complexion. So it's a big thing. And then when you talk about the hair now, that's another thing. We call it like coolie. So it's basically a black person having a child with a Asian person, and then obviously you get a different texture of hair, right? So it's my hair's a little bit like it, but my dad's was really pretty, and so for him, he thought he was like Donatella Versace. Do you know? He thought he was really special, and they used to treat him like he was really special because of that. And I would call him an undercover entrepreneur back then, because back in the 50s, he had 2 houses and a dry cleaners in Jamaica. And then he came to the UK as part of the Windrush generation, and he bought the largest house on the road.
What's the Windrush
Generation. So that was when the UK went to like the Caribbean, because back in like the 50s, they didn't have enough people to man the NHS and certain roles. And so they went to the Caribbean and, you know, asked them to come over to help fill these roles. And so that's when a lot of people from the Caribbean came over to England. Have you not heard of the Windrush generation?
No.
Wow,
It's
it's a big thing.
uneducated.
Yeah, so look it up. It's a real big thing, the Windrush generation. So he came over as part of that, and they was like promised all these things, like the roads will be paved with gold and there'd be all these opportunities, but it was a complete opposite. And so I think the English people at that time was quite angry with all these people coming over to like take their jobs and whatever. And so they couldn't get nowhere to live. So like couples had to live together with other couples, and they was living in one room, and there was a saying, it was no blacks, no Irish and no dogs. And so it was very hard for black people to get anywhere to live, and so they had to live like with friends and you know grouped together. They didn't want any Irish in their houses either, or any dogs. That's a category that they put people in. So yeah, but my dad, being the savvy man that he was, he bought his house. Properties were bought by black people back then, because they couldn't rent anywhere. So that was and so they used to have a partner. So what that was they clubbed together, and they all, you know, somebody sort of like would be in charge of that, and they would all save money.
And put it in together.
Yeah. Pull it together and help each other buy properties.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's how they was able to buy their properties. And so when one person wanted their partner money, then obviously they'd free that money up, and then it was not like the pyramid scheme.
I was about to say, it almost sounds like that.
Something similar to that, but that's how they was able to buy their properties. But my dad was a businessman anyway. It was hard for them, even though they was promised all these jobs, it still wasn't straightforward. And so just imagine they're coming from a hot climate to a cold climate. When they came, it was like winter. Never experienced winter like this before. And then not having nowhere to live, and that struggle and that challenge, it really was pressurized. But I guess, you know, our trials make us strong, yeah? That's where we build resilience. And they're quite resourceful and resilient people anyway.
And how old was your dad, and did he come here by himself, or
he came here by himself, but then he sent for my mum, saved up the money. You know, he got a job eventually, saved up the money and sent for my mum.
So they were together, and she moved. He moved.
Yeah.
And were you born at the stage?
No, none of us.
Because
So there's 6 children. I'm the 5 girls and 1 boy. I'm the youngest girl. They say I'm spoiled. I don't think so, but. So yeah, I'm the youngest girl, and then my brother was the youngest. It was very challenging for them, and obviously that, you know, just basic things like hot water. We never had it in our house. We had to boil pots and kettles to get washed, and we had like metal baths, and my mum used to boil the pots and fill up the bath so we could literally have baths.
And so this was your childhood. You remember it growing up?
Yeah, because, you know, my dad was very frugal. I think he gave my mum the same amount of housekeeping for a decade, but she had to make it work.
Do you mean the percentage of his income?
Yeah. So, for example, just say it was £50 he gave her from day one, he gave her that same £50 for 10 years. But he wanted the same things from that money, not taking into consideration inflation. It's like, what's that? And so coming from the Caribbean, my dad wanted the best of everything. Hard food, which is like yam, green banana, dashing, and all of that was quite expensive. Obviously, it had to be imported.
So was he frugal with with his money, or he expected your mother to be like, where did
He
the
was frugal with his money.
Yeah.
So
okay,
whatever
and
he gave
expected-
my mum, I'm not giving you a penny more. You've got to make it work.
But then expected her to buy the nice things with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
My mum was amazing. She was a woman of substance, because looking back now, reflecting back now, it couldn't have been easy what she had to do. She was even making our clothes, our underwear. That's what, it went that far. And,
Is it because your dad wasn't providing enough, and so she just had to make it work?
And that's where I drew from that, because it felt like we had everything. We lacked nothing. And looking back now, I know that couldn't have been easy. It was definitely a skill.
It's quite crazy to think now, like particularly when you're older, the sacrifices your parents make. Like everyone's got their own stories,
Yeah.
But also how much they managed to hide it. Like,
Yeah.
the fact that you really felt like you had
Sure.
everything you
Yeah.
needed. Did you feel an underlying level of money was a stress, or that your dad was frugal, or that your mum was struggling with the amount she had, or from what you saw, was it just all okay?
All okay. Wow. I didn't experience any of that. Some people did. And what I understand now is it comes down to you as a parent, how you convey that. Because if you're stressed and depressed and you hear all those money arguments, the children are absorbing that, right? And then they take that on themselves, and then that affects how their relationship with money.
And what from that do you think that you've taken into your kind of adult life in terms of like how you view money, or like frugalness or spending or saving, all of that?
Yeah. At one point in my life, I became a single mother. I had 3 children, 6 years and under. I had a mortgage to pay, a car to run, all on a part-time salary. So at that point, when that happened, I felt if my mum can manage with 6, I must be able to manage with 3. So straight away, every year, although I worked part-time, I was able to fly my children out abroad. And my colleagues were like, Norma, how are you doing this? Because, I was working with people that were working full-time or had partners, husbands, whatever, and they still weren't able to fly, take a holiday every year. And it's because I knew my numbers. And I worked with what I had. So I didn't have any credit or anything like that, but I made it work. So, I used to be shopping in like 4 supermarkets every week. When the children went to bed, I'd be sitting down calculating every pound and every penny. Years later, my daughter said to me, Mummy, even now I hear your story, I never knew you had that struggle or you had that challenge.
And did you think that you got that from your mother?
Absolutely. Yeah. And thankfully, even though I was in that zone, I didn't realise that they didn't know what was going on financially. Do you know what I mean? Because I made it work. And so when I would take them on holiday, they would have rucksacks filled to the brim. Now, they weren't with electronic toys or dollars. It was rice, it was sugar, it was biscuits. But, I used to say that's me being resourceful, right? So when we got to our destination, all I had to buy was like meat and veg. Everything else we had. And, somebody said to me, why did you, because every year in the bank we got a bonus, an annual bonus, because I was working in finance at that time. I've been in finance I was working in finance for 20 years. And they said, why did you use that bonus on a holiday? And I said to them, I'd struggled the whole year to make ends meet. I have a mortgage, so for me that's a kind of investment. Let me show my children a different side of life.
Gosh, I have so many things I'd love to ask you. When you were in those times of counting your pounds and being really on top of what you were spending and being as resourceful as you could, what were some of the biggest learnings throughout that time, going from probably having 2 salaries, maybe a full-time and your part-time? What kinds of things did you decide to either pull back on, spend or not spend? What were some of your big learnings from what was obviously a really intense and probably quite lonely time when you're not wanting your kids to feel like they need to be there for you? You were really keeping them separate from what was going on by the sounds of things. Mm-hmm. What kinds of things did you learn throughout those years?
Well, just taking a step back, the father of my 3 children, it was a very abusive relationship. And so becoming a single mother was a kind of a relief in one respect, because you know, he was very controlling. It was a domestic violence relationship. He hated my strength. And so every time I became pregnant, I was vulnerable, right? And so that's when, you know, he would get even worse with violence and just the way he spoke to me and the way he treated me. It was just awful. I remember back then in the 80s, I used to give me the money weekly on a Friday. Come the Wednesday, my stomach would be turning over. I would have headaches. You know, it would just be awful. My anxiety was through the roof because, one, I didn't know whether I was going to get any money on the Friday. Two, if I did get any money, how much it would be. And three, would I get it before the shops close? So I had to deal with that on a weekly basis. And 9 times out of 10, it will be an altercation with regards to getting the money in one way or another.
Was this before you separated? So
this is before I separated.
Yeah, okay, wow.
And then I got to a point and I said, you know, my mum said, "No, Ma, this money's going to send you to Good Mears. That's the you know, the mental hospital." She said, "If you stay with this man," and but you know, anybody in a relationship like that, everybody can be telling you, your family, your friends, you need to leave. But you have to get to that point where you're ready. And I had to get to that point where I was not only physically ready, mentally ready, psychologically ready, and spiritually ready, because I'm a Christian. And when I got to that place, it was like I could write a book about that, my escape plan, you know, of how I made it happen and how I left him. And
was it financially? Is that what you mean? You had to make a real plan to actually be
financial plan. Even though the money was so unstable, I'd rather be without that money and have that some kind of peace and emotional stability.
So did you have kids at this?
Yes,
How
I had
old
the 3 kids, 6, 3 and 2.
So this was going on essentially throughout their childhood.
Yes, yeah.
How long were you planning to leave, and what were the steps that you had to take, particularly financially, to be able to have the ability to walk away? I imagine probably emotionally you'd made that decision before, and then you had to make the practical things happen.
Sure. It took about a year in the planning. Financially, because it was such a hit and miss, I resigned myself to whatever money I've got, I've just got to make it work. And so when I decided to leave him and I left him, I just phoned up my bank, because at that time, because the kids were small, I was just working 1 day a week just to keep my foot in the door. As soon as I left him, I phoned up my bank, had that relationship with them, and I went back part-time.
Oh, so you were working in the bank?
I was working in the bank.
1 day a week.
I
One
see.
day a week, yeah, sorry.
And so throughout that time you did have a little bit of income, but it just wasn't enough,
No.
obviously.
And so obviously when I ended the relationship, I've got to get to work to get some money, and that's when I went back part-time working 5 days a week, 4 hours a day.
And was that because of children? You couldn't do full time because of childcare
Absolutely.
and all
I
that.
had to take them to school.
Yeah.
Oh, that was just, it was just such a challenge to get 3 kids ready, drop them off, drop the car off the station, go all the way up to my workplace was in the West End. And then working in the bank, I was a cashier at the time. And so I had to make sure my till balanced before you could leave. And so that was even an anxious situation, you know. And so, you know, once my till balanced and rushed back on the train, pick my car up, pick the kids up, it was just...
Can I ask you, I go back to some of the things that you touched on before? When you said there was a huge amount of control, and I'm imagining there was a lot of that did come around money, so that's why there was so much anxiety leading up to the Fridays.
Yes.
Did he not want you to go back to work more so that he had more of that control, do you think? Or was it because you had 3 kids, it made sense to only work 1 day a week? I'm just wondering, in that sort of first 6 years of your first child's
I think
life.
because I wanted to be there for my kids as much as possible. And, you know, in my mind, I was thinking, you know, he was earning money, so we could make that happen. But, I think he just hated my strength. And even though, you know, even if he gave me the money or didn't give me the money, I would still make it work somehow. And so because he was seeing that he was getting more and more angry with me.
Because he wanted to see you break.
Yes, absolutely. So then he was, you know, giving it when he wanted to, giving me less. And, you know, it was just, that's how he was trying to control me. But because it wasn't working, he became more and more, you know, violent and aggressive. And
if you were to think back to the beginning of the relationship with the father of your kids, were there early signs of that abuse and particularly when it came to maybe the way he was with money or wanting control, if you were to look back?
Were there signs in the early
Yeah.
days?
Or was it something that kind of grew? Because I think I've experienced a form of an abusive relationship, nothing like what you've experienced. But I think for anyone who hasn't, it's really hard to understand how someone does gain so much control. I guess if you were to look or try and explain signs so that if there are people that are dating and they maybe see something, they can just be aware of it in the early parts of a relationship.
Yeah. So I was with him from 16. And so we used to argue in that, but like, you know, typical teenagers. So that was kind of okay. We did have a few physical fights, but it was nothing compared to how it progressed into that. And I think what happened at the age of 21, I bought my first property.
How did you do that?
My dad used to say, Norma, never ever rent a property. Because if you rent a property for 25 years and you don't pay your rent for 1 week, they would chuck you out. So that sowed a seed in my mind.
Very good advice.
Right.
Go, Dad.
I said, exactly. So I said, that is not going to happen to me. So at the age of 21, I was buying my property. And so I said to him, the kid's dad, look, I'm thinking of buying a property, you know, let's do it together. He went and talked to his brothers and he came back and he said, I'm not buying no house with no woman. I was heartbroken. Do you know what I mean? I was hard. You know, you're thinking of building a family. Exactly. This is what he said to me. But you know what? That was the best sentence that man could have ever said. Because if we bought it together, how would I have got away? It would have just been so.
Of course, so because when you separated, he was the one that had to leave the house.
Absolutely. I had to get an injunction. It was just.
Oh my gosh, so you actually, that was the best thing that could have ever happened, because how would you have left otherwise? You would have had nowhere to go.
And just jumping the gun a bit, but I'm actually an ambassador for survivors of economic abuse. And at the moment, because they do all this lobbying and they're brilliant, and they get all different laws changed. And at the moment, they're dealing with. They said they've found out that there's hundreds of thousands of women survivors that have joint mortgages. And mortgage domestic abuse is such a big thing at the moment, which they're trying to get that law changed, because it heaps people into either homelessness or debt for life. And that would have been, how could I have left?
What does debt for life mean?
Or, you know, you left with all these debts. Do you know what I mean?
Because you can't pay them off because you have to leave it, do you mean?
Yeah, well, you're in this, you know, you've got a mortgage, that is a debt. People don't see that as a debt, but if you've not bought the property cash, it's a debt that you have to pay back. So if their name's tied to that mortgage, they can't leave. Do you know what I mean? So they've got that debt. And a lot of the times when you're in those kind of situations, a lot of survivors, women, get coerced into taking out loans and debts.
It's like sign here and we'll get a house together.
Yeah.
And it's like, no,
It's a slippery slope that just gets worse and
Or,
worse.
you know, because it's an abusive relationship, you know, I want to get a car, you need to sign that for me. And, you know, people are fearing for their lives. And so, you know, they've got all this debt, their credit scores, you know, just on the floor. And it's just an awful situation.
Oh, thank goodness you were able to get out of that.
Oh, Lord
for your
have mercy.
kids.
thank you for your father.
Yes.
Like, honestly.
And so I think from that point of me buying that property, that's when things started to change. Because down the line, he started to say, because I had my first child at 22, I lost my first child. I had preeclampsia. But
What is that?
That's when your blood pressure goes through the roof, and you could have a stroke, a heart attack.
And is this when you were pregnant?
This is when I was pregnant, but that's when he started to be horrible to me. I think
The stress of it.
Yeah, the stress of it, honestly. And so I lost my first child at 22, and then I had my next child at 24. And so each pregnancy, and then he started to say, this is my house. And I guess he realised that he made a mistake in not putting his name in that property. So that's when he started to become more abusive and aggressive. And
Gosh, I just like...
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I just think that's why, no doubt, you do the work that you do.
Yes.
Because things could have been completely different for your kids, for you.
Absolutely.
Could have been a life of being trapped in something that was abusive in so many different facets of your life. Like, I'm so glad that your dad told you that, because there'd be a
Yes.
lot of people that don't have someone in their life that is helping them make decisions that prepare them for the worst. And I think that, you know, when you're in love and when you're starting a family, you're never expecting for things to go wrong.
And it's quote unquote unromantic
Absolutely.
to plan for when things go wrong when you're in such a happy phase. But it's so
you just
true.
never know what's going to happen. And to be able to have the education and the job to fall back on,
Yeah.
one thing, and keeping your foot in the door by at least doing once a week, so clever. Because you're
Absolutely.
keeping your skills up, your
Yeah.
relationships with the bank. You could go back and say, I want to come back more.
Absolutely.
I mean, all those things are just so clever. And I think that if it was spoken about more in terms of what the worst case scenario looks like, a lot more of us would be helping each other and having these conversations and talking about how we can protect ourselves financially to get out of situations that are really unhealthy and
Absolutely.
terrifying.
They really are terrifying.
What was the pivotal moment that made you change your career from finance to psychotherapy and then eventually morph the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in finance for almost 20 years. Children are teenagers now, and I felt like I wanted to do something more meaningful. So I'm a Christian, and at church we have like a counselling telephone line. And so I volunteered to do that, and they used to say, Norma, you're really good, and you know you're really helping these people. And so they said, why don't you take it up as a career? It didn't even cross my mind, but as a psychotherapist working with people, it's just so powerful and so rewarding, you know, when you see the metamorphosis transformation in people's lives. And so I looked into it, inquired about it, and started the studying whilst the children were still teenagers now. But
So sorry, so you had 3 kids.
yes,
You were working
Working
part-time
part-time.
and you were studying.
yes,
Do you sleep?
You are a superwoman.
thank you.
How were you actually, were you doing that at night, the study?
Working part-time freed me up. Yeah. So that gave me some space. So by the time I picked up the kids and dropped them off to my mum's and then went to college and that, I made it work. My mum made it work. And make it work I did. It's all in your mind. You'll either win or lose in your mind.
Do you think that it was because you weren't privy to that when you were younger in terms of that day-to-day, week-to-week financial stress that you were able to have appreciation for and learning in a way that was positive opposed to giving you like a fearful money mindset? Because I think there's a lot of people who've experienced frugality in some description when they're younger, but it doesn't necessarily have a positive impact on the way that they then approach their finances.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if you've thought about how did you use those as really clever learnings? And also, I guess, the idea of knowing finance and understanding probably the idea of investing, you bought a property. Was it the idea that you knew you could earn more, or that, like, I'm just curious, because when Vic often talks about the idea of, yes, you can save and you can be really careful with your money, but actually increasing your earning capacity like you did in terms of studying so that you could then earn more. You were kind of doing a 360 approach. You knew the frugal side, you were investing in yourself to learn more. Like, how has your whole money story evolved over the years and from what you saw from your mum?
Yeah. It was a very positive experience. Hence why when it comes to finance, regardless, I've been in situations where, because I'm self-employed, I've not had a contract for nearly a year. I've just got a contract now, a paid contract, a PAYE contract that's working for a company now. I had to use my skills from back then to sustain me for a whole year. So it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. And not only what I learned, it's what I saw, what I was exposed to, how they conveyed what was going on in the household. Even though it obviously wasn't positive for my mom, it was positive for me. But then saying that, you know, you can live in a house, we've all got, I don't know if you've all got siblings, and I'm sure each and every one of you probably have a different take on money because regardless of what you've been exposed to, it's how you've processed that exposure and how you've internalized it and what that means to you. So as I said, I'm the youngest of 5 girls. I've got the most properties, They don't listen. I don't think they'll be listening to it, but do you know what I mean? And when it comes to money, maximizing my money, helping people around me maximize their money, live their best life, I've got that. And that's what I share with as many people as possible. Single mother, married mother, whatever. For me, it's about how can I empower you?
And how do you integrate that into your psychotherapy sessions? And like, what are some of the biggest insights that you've found from your clients?
So I have a private practice in Harley Street. I don't know if you've heard of Harley Street.
Love Harley Street.
Yeah. So that's where my private practice is.
I go there for a few treatments.
All right, okay. Yeah, for sure. You can get anything from plastic surgery to psychotherapy, right? In Harley Street. So I work with experts in their field, barristers and just all different people. And it's just so amazing that these experts, when it comes to money, they almost regress to like a childlike state because they have no confidence around money. They don't have any much understanding apart from what they've been exposed to, learnt behaviours, whatever. That's their experience with money. With regards to psychotherapy, I take them back to understand where their money management practices have derived from. Is it serving you? Because if it's not, we're going to explore that and we're going to have to learn some behaviours and some new behaviours and unlearn some unserving behaviours.
So do you look at their childhood, their upbringing, like their parents, how they were with money and how that's like infiltrated their life?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a starting place because, you know, it's a lot of people, when I say to people, what is your relationship with money? It's like they're looking at me like I'm green. Is there actually, do we even have a relationship with money? They wasn't even aware that they had a relationship with money. And so helping people understand their psychology of money. And basically what that is, your psychology of money is your beliefs, your thoughts and your behaviours around spending, budgeting, investing. And so exploring that, what does that mean to you and how does it affect you in the here and now today?
It's so important, but yet something that is so like underexplored.
It's so complex as well. Like I can't believe I've only discovered it since we've started doing the curve. Like it's something that should be taught in schools,
Absolutely.
universities. It's crazy to think that it's so ingrained in all aspects of our life when we're older that the sooner we understand. It's like we were talking about periods, you know? We don't know all the other things that come with when you're menstruating, like you're angry, you're hormonal, might be eating heaps. Like we don't get taught any of that at school.
Absolutely.
It's like, I don't know, it's the same with money. It's like you just kind of discover it and it's like an aha moment.
But I also feel as though there's this, you know, the things that you don't know about yourself or understand, you actually can't change. So you're unconsciously almost just completely at the mercy of whatever you have learned without realizing it. And you could spend an entire lifetime living out those unconscious beliefs in a really negative and unhelpful way unless you spend the time to look at those things.
And do some work on yourself. You know, I'm just intrigued by people because I work with couples, couple therapy, especially financial therapy. And, you know, they come together. They don't understand their own psychology of money, let alone able to have that conversation with their partner. And this is such a fundamental part of your relationship, right? Because money and the concept of money and what that means, it, you know, flows over into so many areas of, you know, your life. And people are so quick to sign up for a mortgage when they're in a relationship, you know, not discussed money, only to realise down the line that this person's frivolous with their money or this person's frugal with their money and I'm not, you know, that doesn't work for me. All these things should be discussed from a very, very early stage of your relationship. Everything else is discussed. But, you know, and money is one of the number one things that, you know, break down a relationship. And so I help them individually understand their relationship with money and help them to start a journey of having like a check-in on a weekly or monthly basis, whatever works with you, with regards to your money and, you know, how that's impacting the relationship and your life.
Well, your choice in partner can have one of the biggest impacts on your financial trajectory.
Absolutely.
That freaks me out so much.
I know.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
Because
it's hard enough finding a partner, let alone putting
don't date another spanner
that on it.
Well, when you were working as a psychotherapist, you already had a pretty long history of working with money through the bank and what you'd experienced in your earlier relationship. Did you start that work on yourself first and then come to the realization, wow, actually this psychotherapy and my money skills merged together? Was it self-work that happened and then you thought this is something I can share with other people?
Sure. Working with couples, the money situation kept coming up. Even though they would come to therapy with different presenting issues, it would always
Go back to money.
How interesting.
Absolutely. And I thought, hold on a minute, let me just look into this a bit more. And as I began to, just look through the files and whatever, and I thought, there is something here. And then just thinking about my own self. Then I started to think about single parents, right? If you're not able to manage your money, the impact of that on your mental health, it will just floor you. If you're, for example, I had a friend, she became a single parent, and her partner controlled all the money. Well, not controlled it. He just paid all the bills and everything. So she thought, oh, that was good. I've not got that stress. She had 3 children, only to find out that that was his control. So when they separated, she was floored. It's like she didn't know what to do, had to pay a bill. She did not know anything. And so she obviously nearly had a breakdown because of it, because of the stress of it. I've got to look after these 3 children. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. I don't know where to start with my money. And, how's it going to, there's so many things to consider. And so I thought for people that, single parents that are not earning enough money to, on one salary, it's gone from 2 to 1. How do you manage that?
But how do you, with that situation you just described, I can see how people fall into that situation because we're all busy, life's busy, but at what point does it become control? Do you know what I mean? She's sitting there probably thinking, okay, he's looking after the bills and everything. That's great, something I don't have to think about until she has to think about it through a divorce or separation. Sure. I guess what advice would you give people in a similar situation like that to identify if it's control or if it's just a helping hand?
Well, first of all, what I would say, regardless of how great you might think your partner is, they're taking control of the finances, you still need a check-in, a weekly or a monthly check-in, just to know where we are, what's going on, what are the bank accounts, what are the bills. Have that knowledge as opposed to being so that you don't get blindsided. Because a lot of people do think, oh, that's great, they're taking care of it, they're paying everything, I don't have to pay that. That is one less thing that you have to deal with. But then that could be a form of abuse, because there's been situations where a partner's bought something lovely for their other half, and then the other half has gone out with their friends for the weekend or for the night, and then the partner don't speak to them for a week. That's another form of abuse. Do you know what I mean?
Okay,
So that's control. Do you know what I mean? And you might think, oh, he's lovely, he's bought me this outfit, he said I can go out, but actually when they've gone out, he doesn't speak to her for a week. And so just identifying things that make you uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? So it's about being aware. Yes, I know my partner's taking care of the finances, but I still need to be part of that.
You have helped thousands and thousands of people improve their financial education.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the most common misconception that people have about money management in general?
Sure. For me, I think people think if I earn more, I'd be fine. So they get a second job and a third job or a little side hustle, but it's not about that at all. Like I said, it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. We go back to your psychology of money. Where does that come from? Because you can earn more. Celebrities, I've worked with celebrities, and every time I speak to somebody, they always say, I need your help. And you'd think they're earning enough money. I work with people, experts in their field. So it's clear, lottery winners is a prime example. It's clearly not about the money, right? It's about a lack of financial education and your psychology of money. That is your foundation. You have to get those 2 things right before you earn another penny, I would say. 80% of it is about financial literacy and the psychology of money. 20% is about the money.
A lot of what you talk about at events, at various things with clients, is the idea of using money as an empowering tool rather than something that hangs over your head as this source of anxiety and stress. How can people listening who are maybe starting to realize they have some really negative financial habits that are potentially rooted in past psychological issues or traumas when it comes to money and finances, what can they start to do to unravel that?
To be honest with you, what they really do need is therapeutic intervention. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he was at my boot camp because I run a financial boot camp, and we was going through his finances, and he became really angry at one point. And I asked him what was going on, and he said, you know what? At one point in my life, my mum, she used to give us our evening meal and then lock the kitchen door. And then he said, when I went to school the next day, I was hungry. So I don't know what happened in the morning. I don't know if he didn't get any breakfast. And he said, you know, I'm so angry with my mum for that. You know, I really do. You know, I don't have a relationship with her because of that. And as a result of that, he's frivolous with his money and he's in a relationship. So he's taken all of that into his relationship. He just spends because whatever he gets, he spends because there was a time when he had lack and scarcity, and that ain't gonna, as far as he's concerned, that's not going to happen to him again. But because he's spending them frivolously, he hasn't got any money. So it's a vicious cycle. And so I said to him, have you spoken to your mum about what she did? Now, I'm not saying what she did was right. I'm just saying that may be learnt behaviour. That may be what may have happened to her as a result of trying to preserve food or making sure, you know, the family got one wholesome meal. So you need to understand where this is coming from. And he was able at some point to go after the therapeutic work that we did to speak to his mum. And it was that her mother did that to her. So that's what she thought was the right thing to do for her own children, not knowing the psychological impact it had on him. It was huge. And then people are going into relationships with people that have different traumas, don't know what's going on, not having these conversations. They're living a life of hell.
So do you think for him confronting his mum, it was a way for him to release that anger and therefore not spend in the same way? Because it was kind of like he was trying to compensate for...
Absolutely, yeah. So it was a twofold. It was for him to have that conversation with his mum and then, you know, release some of that anger and that poison that was, you know, he was engulfed in, and then make more sense of his finances. He was then in a position to want to work on his finances properly. Do you know what I mean? Without having all of that at the back of his, at the back of his mind.
Can we just touch on with the mental health, just how much money plays into mental health?
Sure.
And how it's always overlooked or often overlooked, like the connection between the two.
Sure.
Can you just give like some insights into how financial stress plays into our mental well-being and vice versa, how mental well-being plays into your finances?
So the Mental Health Foundation said that 94% of people in the UK worry about their money. Champion Health said that people with financial pressures are twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts. So when it comes to finances, you know, if you get an unexpected bill, how does that affect you? And especially if you haven't got the money to pay for it, you automatically feel stressed, you automatically feel anxious, overwhelmed, especially if it's bill after bill. So of course that's going to affect your mental well-being, especially if you don't have the means to pay it. Do you know what I mean? And there are so many free resources out there, and that's what I help people with as well. Unknown, because nobody's speaking about anything. So they're, you know, going around with, you know, feeling mentally, unstable because of all what's happening. They're depressed, you know, people are going around with like, they have low moods. It affects your sleep pattern. It affects your eating patterns. Do you know what I mean? All of these different things. And a lot of people don't even associate it with their money. They might think they're feeling stressed or depressed for other reasons. But just having that conversation, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't realise my money was making me feel X, Y, Z. When things are happening psychologically, it has to come out one way or another. It either comes out mentally or physically or both. So I don't know if you've heard of psychosomatic symptoms.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So things can be going on mentally, and, you know, then you start, you know, having all these different ailments. Go to the doctors, you can't find anything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what is wrong? And, you know, what is wrong with me? And it's still, obviously, you know, if the doctor does have time to talk to you and he asks you, like, sort of like, what's going on in life, it can help make that connection. I've read about somebody that woke up one morning and couldn't walk from the waist, was paralysed from the waist down because of psychosomatic symptoms. The mental health pressure was that intense. And people are living in relationships because of finances that are having all these backaches, headaches, palpitations, and do you know what I mean? Not knowing, well, they understand and we know we've got financial issues, but not knowing the depth of how it's impacting them physically, emotionally, psychologically.
It's just making me realise how much my underlying financial stress is probably having a massive impact in other parts of my life without me realising it.
Absolutely.
You've obviously seen all of those symptoms in your clients. I'm assuming whether it be like quite serious physical symptoms as well as emotional distress. What are some ways that you help them address that?
First of all, I think you need to know for yourself what is the root of these issues in terms of your finances. Understand where your financial practices have derived from and the impact it's had on you. Because these are all light bulb moments. Because you're just living your life, right, spending your money or doing whatever you are with your money. You don't have that awareness of the impact it's having on you. So let's go back and let's explain. It's, oh my God. And they remember all these things that have happened in their early childhood and didn't realise it was traumas. It's in their unconscious. And I help make the unconscious, that's a part of a psychodynamic process, is making the unconscious conscious, bringing it into the conscious, exploring it, and then addressing it, and then, you can let go of it.
So is that how you, like, it's all well and good identifying, okay, this is how my childhood has impacted, but then like, how do you change that? How do you make that go from a negative to a positive?
Absolutely. So for example, that person that I used so that was his childhood experience, his childhood trauma. So, okay, this is what you experienced then, but you're not experiencing it now, are you? No, you're not. So he said, no, I'm not experiencing it now. The impact it had on you then, obviously you felt helpless. You wasn't in a position to do anything about that then. But now you're earning your own money. You can spend it how you want and do whatever you want with it. And so now you have your own money and you have autonomy to make your own decisions. That can't happen to you again. That really can't. And just having that belief, that's empowerment, because he was powerless then. So it's understanding that happened then. It's not happening now.
That must take time to unpack though and change.
It does, but they want that change. You want that change. You don't want to be living like that. You don't want to be living with that hell thinking, my mother, every time you get money, I'm going to spend it. You don't want to live like that. It's making you unhappy. It's affecting your relationship. So you've come because you want change. You go to the gym, you can look at the apparatus for as long as you want. You want that change. You've got to do the work to make that change happen.
So would you say then it's a process of working through things from a mental standpoint first, getting someone to a place where they've reframed their relationship with money and they feel empowered?
Yes.
And then do you draw on your financial background to help them actually implement those changes?
Absolutely, because I've worked with lots of financial advisors and that, and they've worked with people financially, set out all these financial plans and goals and perfect. And then they revisit them a month or two later and they've not done any action.
Well, it's like trying to eat healthily without understanding why you're eating is good for you.
Absolutely.
Because it's like the outcome, but if you don't have a deeper connection to the reason why you're doing something,
absolutely,
it's so much easier to fall off a bandwagon.
Absolutely. And I'd done a podcast with some financial advisors a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, Norma, this is just making so much sense. Understanding now why these people are not taking action, because it's more than that. You're trying to, like a lot of people, young people say to me, oh, Norma, I want to invest. And I ask them, what is your financial situation? I said, wanting to invest before understanding your money management practices is like trying to take your A-levels without studying your GCSEs.
This is exactly what happened to me.
Okay.
Because we started learning about investing because that's Vic's background.
Yeah.
But I didn't have, and still I'm really learning those fundamentals when it comes to money management. So I got to a point where I'd invested far too much and then didn't have my basics sorted. It's almost like learning to run or
Before
like trying to do a marathon before you can walk.
Absolutely. So, and that's the same thing. So, you as a financial advisor, obviously you go to see a financial advisor, they're there to sort out your finances, which is what they're supposed to do. They don't ask you about how your money is affecting your mental well-being. That connection has not been made. So you can give a person the best financial plans in the world, but if they don't have their understanding of their psychology of money, and because to make the best financial informed decisions, you have to be in the right mindset, right? You have to be in the right frame of mind. So, that's why millionaires will just make these frivolous...
But it's like you fall back into old habits.
Absolutely.
If you don't
do
understand,
the homework before, you don't build that foundation before, you will definitely fall back into... And be accountable to somebody as well along that journey, that transition journey.
Do you have any advice for people who are listening to this, who are thinking... shit, yeah, I need to go and work on this. Oh my goodness, I've got a bit of work to do. What kinds of things, do you have resources that they can find? Do you have journaling prompts people can do in their own time? Are there
Reflections
resources or things that could help people who maybe right now aren't in a position to commit to full, therapy to go through this?
Sure. There are lots of free, I'll give you those links to places where, or just, online resources
That'd be
that can
amazing.
help, start that journey. It's about taking that step. A lot of people say, I want to change, but actually taking that step, it is a big thing. I can't discount it. Do you know what I mean? And so helping them, people that are in positions that can't afford my services, I'm there to help people just to start the journey.
Because it's kind of, I guess, like saying, I've got a lot of things I need to go to therapy. I need to go to a therapist, but could you just give me a couple of blogs to read? It's like, nah, you probably
need to go and do the work.
It's a different level of work that needs
it is,
to be done.
I found when it comes to money, people, no matter how intelligent or brilliant they are, it's almost like you have to take them by the hand, step by step through the processes. As basic as the processes may be, budgeting. Budgeting is not just budgeting your income and expenditure. It's actually a skill and a technique, and there's layers to it. And that's what I teach people through my boot camp. And so if it was just documenting your income and expenditure, everybody would be doing it and nobody be in debt, right? If it was that simple.
Yeah.
It's much more than that. And so it is, really taking people through those steps. When I say, just if I say to people, just go off and do that, they get lost. They don't feel confident enough to take those steps. So I know from my own professional experience, you literally do really need that support.
What about people that, like, in terms of money management, might think, I don't have enough. I'm starting from zero. We get this all the time with investing. It's like, well, I don't have enough to invest. And it's like, how do you change that narrative around, like, well, I don't have enough money to manage, or I'm in too far into debt, or like, I don't know, like, how do you change that mindset and get someone on board to start building that solid, like, financial foundation?
So a lot of people that I work with, they always say, I don't have enough. I say to them, okay, then you need to come to my boot camp. And I say to them, the money
Can I please sign up to the boot camp? I'm like...
It sounds like I feel
can't
like
wait.
Norma's going to be yelling at you.
Yeah.
Climb the tree!
Get some
Jump over
sweatbands.
And I say to people, the money that you pay for that boot camp, I'll find that in your money, because I find every pound, every penny. I find your financial leakages. You're swiping money everywhere, and you think you ain't going to...
I have a lot of leakages.
Absolutely. Norma can find all the
And I
leaks.
plug those leakages, and it's so liberating to think, oh my gosh, people think they need second jobs, or, I just can't make ends meet. It's not that. It's just that you're not managing your money right. And within the boot camp, the budgeting, I help people to set micro budgets. What do I mean by that? So if you've got, if people go shopping, how much do you spend on food shopping a week or whatever? People just, randomly pluck any figure out the air, but you need to have set figures for everything. You want, and psychologically, once you have those figures, you miraculously work within those figures, even if it's half of what you thought you needed. I mean, to date with my boot camp, the person that spent the most amount of money in a month eating out was £800. She was nearly in exactly. She didn't have a clue. She thought it was about £200. Wow. And so this is financial leakages. Do you know what I mean? It's swiping the card and you've got credit there. It's so easily done.
It's a lot of sushi or a lot of naan breads.
No,
or
you're having caviar. You're going
And
through.
the Uber Eats and all of that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, gosh.
So it's, it's so easily done. And if you're not keeping a track of it, you don't want to look at your bank statements or your credit card statements. It's so easily done. People see budgeting as something restricting. Budget is empowering, because once you know what you've got to spend, you're in control. And that's empowerment is about being in control. But, you know, people say to me, I don't have a budget because, you know, I'll be restricted. And I think, oh, my gosh, you don't understand budgeting. I'll just quickly give you an example. So I like nice things. I like high-end things. I've worked how many years? Kids have all grown up now. I've got my money to spend on whatever. So every so often I'll buy myself a high-end bag or whatever. I was going to Bali one year and Harley Street is near Selfridges. I popped in Selfridges and I saw a lovely bag. And I was in a battle saying, should I get the bag? Should I not get the bag? And then I thought, hold on a minute. I'm going to Bali. Let me check with the airport if I can get it duty free. Phoned up the airport. They had my bag. No. £500 cheaper.
That must be such a good feeling.
Let me tell you.
How expensive was the bag?
I love that that's where your head goes. She's like, what kind of bag was it?
It was a Chanel bag, but it was £500 cheaper. But what did I do with that £500 I saved? That's me maximising my money. I used £200 to make overpayments on one of my mortgages. I used another £200 to pay for an holiday because I shop around for my holidays. And then I used the remainder £100 to go towards my spending money on that holiday to Bali. Because it's all about saving and spending. Do you know what I mean?
It's almost like, this might be a weird analogy and tell me if this is totally off, but I've been reading a lot about when you cut back on something, no matter what it is, rather than just taking something away, you need to almost like fill the void with something, whether it be an activity or a thing. So it's like you reward yourself for finding a bargain or being clever with your money. So it encourages you the next time to do that, because it's not a feeling of lack. It's how can I do this better and fill those gaps, if that makes sense.
100%. It's like because I used to be a substance misuse therapist. And people with addiction, you can't just say you need to stop. There's a process. But even though there's a process, you need to replace the negative with something positive to fill that void, as you said. So when it comes to money, it's a game for me. It's not about how much I have. Some people think, Norma, you must be a millionaire, because last year I had like 5 holidays. It's all looking for these deals, making my money work for me and enjoying my life.
Oh, love
you
that.
are actually incredible. I have loved this conversation so much. Honestly, I struggle sometimes with attention. Like I haven't thought once about anything that was happening outside of this room, and I haven't got a clue how long we've been talking for, but I have just loved every second of talking to you. Thank you so much for coming in and being on the podcast.
You're more than welcome.
You're so charismatic and so engaging as well.
It's
like
inspiring. I just
Thank
think
you.
it's also just such a cool story to see how you've taken so many experiences and turned them into empowering, positive changes, but then also now doing the same for thousands of other people.
Absolutely.
And sharing that. And I think for anyone that would love to find out more about what you do and work with you or anything, can we just give a solid plug to anywhere that they can find more out about you?
Sure. So my website is my name, normacassius.com. My Instagram is Think Like a Bank, because I've written a book called Think Like a Bank. So my Instagram is think.like.a.bank. Hook me up. I'm here to make you live the best life. I'm living my best life and I'm a living testimony, and I'll make that happen for you.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to be booking
Great
in.
pitch.
I think I really definitely would need this. I actually just think I think one day if I get good enough at something, I would love to be. I mean, right now in our podcast dynamic, Vic is very much the teacher. I'm just sitting here absorbing everything. But I'd love to get so almost
good at a skill or something.
that I can do the same. I don't know what that will be. It's definitely not going to be singing or painting or running.
I think it's something, that you're naturally passionate about. And people will say, oh, you're so good at this. You don't even realise you're doing it. It's within us. Everything we need is within us. And it's just spending time with yourself and just thinking, oh, yeah. It probably doesn't even come to mind because you do it so naturally,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking with your friends about your salaries, all of that stuff.
And if you like what you heard, we would love if you could please hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode.
And it only takes 1 second and it would really make our week, our month, our year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So please do it. Okay. Love you.
Bye.